Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Tonya, and on this channel I like to share about all things fantasy book related. So epic fantasies, high fantasy, low fantasy, romantasy. Basically, if it's a fantasy book, I'm here to talk about it because I love all things fantasy. So if that's something that interests you, I hope you'll stick around and subscribe and become part of my little fantasy book community here on YouTube. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about my March TBR list. So for March, I have 5 physical books on my list. Plus, I also have 2 audiobooks that I'm hoping to get finished up this month. So I thought we'd first start out talking about the physical books. And when I say physical books, some of these I do read physical books and some of these are ebooks, which I read on Kindle. To me, either format, it's a book. You're reading it physically, so it's all good there. So whichever way you want to read it, that's a-okay with me. So the first book that I'm planning on reading in March is Emily Wilde's The Map of the Other Lands. And this is the second book in the Emily Wilde series. I finished the Encyclopedia of Fairies in February. So for March, moving on to book 2. And then probably for April, I'll be moving on to book 3. Now this series, it's a really cute little series. It's a pretty easy read. Probably you'd call it cozy fantasy. There's romance in it, but it's not over the top romance. It's more, it is set in our world here, so it's a low fantasy book. It has been found that fairies do exist, and Emily is a scholar at Cambridge University. So in the first book, she was working on her encyclopedia all about the different species of fairies. And then in this book, Emily is back at Cambridge and she's working on a map of all the fairy realms. Wendell Brambleby is also back at Cambridge with her. That was her former rival in all things fairy, but now, we have found that they are love interest, even though Emily is not quite willing to fully go down the road of love with Brambleby as of yet. So whilst she's doing research for her map of the fairy realms, fairies from other realms start showing up. We also have assassination attempts on Brambleby because he is actually an exiled fairy king and his evil mother is trying to have him assassinated. So there's lots of things that look like they're going to be going on in this book, and looking forward to just continuing the adventure of Emily. You'll find that she is definitely a scholar. Sometimes she puts her actual emotions on the back burner and she looks at everything through more of a scholar's eye, which, sometimes the morality of that is a little skewed, but I think that's part of what makes the books interesting. So just looking forward to seeing what the second installment has in store for her. So the second book I'm planning on reading this month is Rebel Witch. That's the second book in the Crimson Moth series. The first book was called Heartless Hunter, and this is a YA series. I would call it a romantasy because there is definitely a big romance portion of the book. There's other themes in there too, but romance is definitely one of the key focuses. Now, not a super spicy romance because it is YA, but still, plenty of romance to get in there. So in the second book, we're continuing to follow Rune. She's on the run. She was outed as a witch in the first book, and so now she's on the run because witches are still being persecuted. Gideon is the witch hunter. He is also the love interest, and that always brings something to the table, witch and witch hunter. So at one point, Rune gives Gideon an impossible choice, and things continue to evolve from there. Now, I'm not sure if this is a duology and this book finishes out the series, or if she has more books planned in the series, but can't wait to see how things play out. The third book I'm planning on reading is Fall of the Neverdark, and that is the 4th book in the Echoes saga by Philip Quintrell. Not sure if I'm saying his name right, but that's the pronunciation that we're going to go with. Now, the Echoes saga, it's a great epic fantasy. There's 9 books total, I believe. The first 3 books kind of act as a trilogy. You follow one set of It's a large set, but you follow one set of characters throughout the course of the books. And then with the fourth book, some of the characters will carry over, but it is set quite a few years in the future, so you won't have the exact same cast of characters. In the fourth book, we're continuing Gideon's story, and Gideon is a dragon who is a dragon rider, so basically someone who can speak with dragons, and they're also bonded on a much deeper level as well. And they've always been the peacekeepers of the lands, but they had dwindled in numbers. Gideon was actually the last Dragon, but now he is training up a new set of Dragons to help him. I hope I'm saying that right, by the way. You'll notice pronunciations are not my strong point, but he's training up another group of Dragons for the future, and there is, of course, new evil on the horizon that they will have to fight. So not sure if then this story will continue over the next 3 books, so it's kind of like another trilogy, or if each of the books going forward will all kind of be set in the same world and following the Echo Saga, which I won't spoil what that is, but it is the main theme throughout the book. So not sure if it's just, you know, from the 4th through the 9th, if they're a little bit more individualized story of the Echo Saga, or if it's going to be first 3 books were kind of a trilogy, 4, 5, and 6 are kind of a trilogy, and then 7, 8, and 9 are kind of their own trilogy. So not sure, but needless to say, I'm looking forward to the 4th book. This is a really great epic fantasy series. Now, it did take a hot minute to get into the 1st book because there's just so many characters and different places that each of those characters were in. But once you kind of get down who the characters are, where they're from, and those different pieces, then the book's really picked up and it's just a great story. I'm also planning on reading Queen of Serpents and Shadows this month, and that is the 4th book in the Blood and Salt series, and it does finish out the series. So we're finishing up the tale of Ara, who is a princess, but we find out that she's half god in the previous books, and Riven, who is a prince, but he is also half god, and they've fallen in love and had their ups and downs. And at this point, they're still fighting the Fae King and the goddess Nyx, and we're going to find out if their love actually holds and if they're able to defeat the Fae King and Nyx the goddess. So I'm really looking forward to just seeing how the series ends. These have been really easy books to read. They're just, I think, around 400 pages each, so they're a quick read and they're not something that's too mentally taxing. So if you're in need of a little break from something that was either really emotionally taxing or like something like a big epic fantasy, this is a really good series. Now, I won't say that the world building or the character building in it is the best. It's a light read. It's still enjoyable. I'd say the first 3 books were like probably 3.5 stars. So they're not anything like, you know, gonna be your favorite book of all time, but they're still good little reads. Then the last physical book I'm planning on reading is House of Earth and Blood, which is the first book in the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas. And I am late to the game with this book. I know a lot of people have loved it. It's gotten a lot of hype, so I'm interested to see if that is worthy hype or not. I love the Throne of Glass series. I just thought that was an amazing series, and I love the characters in it. I like Court of Thorn and Roses that she wrote as well, but I definitely lean more towards the Throne of Glass side than the ACOTAR side. So it'll be interesting to see how this particular book compares to what I've already read of hers, and just seeing if it's actually worth the hype or not. Then audiobook wise, I'm currently listening to Fates and Furies, which is part of the Legends of Thesamar Romantasy series. So I plan on finishing that up this month. We've been following Althea and Wilder on their journeys to fight evil and to once again allow females to be fighters as well. Due to a prophecy, females weren't allowed to hold a blade for a while, which, you know, whatever. Girls can be fighters too. But Thea has come up in the fighting ranks and now she's very respected. Her mentor is Wilder, who is a war sword, and he's been training her over the course of the series, and their relationship has moved from apprentice and master to lovers to fighters to back to lovers. And that's one thing I will say about the book series. I've really enjoyed it, but there has been a lot of the back and forth of I love you, I hate you, I love you, I hate you. So occasionally I got to take a little break from that. That gets to be a bit much for me. But overall, the series as a whole has been great. Thea and Wilder are really good characters, and they've been fighting the shadow forces, and there's some twists and turns that have come along the way that I wasn't necessarily expecting. So hoping to finish up that book. That audiobook this month, and then there are some additional books in the series, so I'm sure I'll just move right on to those as well. And then I'm also hoping to listen to Somewhere Beyond the Sea, which is the second book in the House of the Cerulean Sea series. Whew, that was a mouthful to say. But in this particular book, we're going to learn Arthur's backstory. And if you've read the first book, then you'll definitely be invested in hearing Arthur's story and the different things that happened to him while he was growing up and becoming an adult with the abilities that he has. Now, I will say, based on the first book, and this is why I'm also going to listen to the second one, I listened to the audiobook for the first one as well. And I felt like that first book was one that was much better suited to an audiobook than to physically reading. It took a good minute to get invested into the story. When you read the different marketing pieces, the book is not exactly what you expect it to be based on those marketing little blurbs that you see. It gets there, but it's not like that for a good portion of the book. You kind of got to get about halfway through before you can go, oh, I can see where the story is actually going. But by listening to it and having the narrator, and it was a great narrator who did the first book, it did keep me going, where I don't know if I was physically reading it, if I would have been invested enough to finish it. By the end of the book, it was great. But it was about a quarter to maybe halfway through before I really felt invested in the story and invested in the characters, which I had heard that could be the case, so that's why I went with the audiobook for the first one. And since I did the audiobook for the first one, I'm just going to go ahead and do the audiobook for the second one as well. I don't usually mix. I know some people, listen to the audiobook and read the physical book at the same time, or do the audiobook and then read the next book in the series. I tend to keep it all audiobook, all physical book. I don't really cross over much in between there, but I think Arthur's story is going to be really interesting, so I'm pretty excited to hear what he has to say. And that is everything that is on my plan to read this month. Now, if I make it to any more books, great. If I don't, that's okay too. That's the great thing about books. If life gets in the way and you don't necessarily get to read as much as you would like to, the books are going to be waiting for you. They're not going to run away because you didn't make it to them. So anything I don't happen to make it to this month, I'll just push off to next month, but we'll just have to see how far I'll get. I'd also love to hear what you're planning to read this month. If there's anything you'd recommend or anything you would not recommend that I read, just leave a comment down below. I always love hearing other people's book recommendations. So thank you so much for being here. Take care, and I'll catch you in my next video. Bye.